Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This year we have been speaking about things that cause anxiety and depression, and for people to not be happy in their lives. One of the things that causes this is when we put ourselves into a situation we are not prepared for. I am sure that every single one of us here takes our careers, our businesses, and our investments very seriously. After all, we all want to be successful in life, and in order to do that, we need to invest time and effort into these things. And if someone said they didn't want to be successful, we would say that they're crazy. And at the same time, we also want that success for our children too. So, we send our children to school and we encourage them to get good grades so that they can then have good jobs or good business opportunities. Therefore, from the young age of 4, children start to go to school for most of their day. And at the age of 5, schools start to give children homework. This means that even when they come back from school, they still have to spend more time studying. And as they grow up, they have to go secondary school. And now they are given more and more homework. So, causing them to even need to study during the weekend as well. And then they still have to go sixth form or college as well. Then they will also be heavily encouraged to go to university and get a degree, because we are told that people with degrees are more successful in life. Once they get their degree, they start applying for jobs. Most people will find out that nobody will take them seriously until they have work experience. So they have to do some volunteer work or training for 1 or 2 years. And then, eventually, if they're lucky, they'll get a junior level job in the field that they've chosen. And only once they've worked as a junior for a few years can they finally be trusted to be given more responsibilities and recognized as an experienced professional in their industry. So, we spend almost our entire productive lives, from the age of 4 years old to our mid-20s, studying and training in order so that we can be successful in life. But, even after all of this studying and training, can anyone say if we're really ready to be successful in life? In a study regarding this topic, couples who had decided to get divorced were referred to one of the leading marriage counselors in order to see if counseling could save their marriage. These were couples who had already decided to get divorced, meaning that they thought there was no way their marriage would work and wanted to end it. The couples would attend some counseling sessions for a period of a few weeks, where they would speak about the problems they were facing and then receive some advice. This study found that 90% of these couples had actually changed their mind about divorce and decided to stay together. What these couples realized was that whilst they had prepared for their careers and jobs and businesses, none of them had actually prepared to be successful in their marriages. In other words, the lady did not know how to be a good wife, and the man did not know how to be a good husband. In fact, one lady who was even in her 50s commented that in her 30 years of marriage, she never knew what love was. Of course, many of us will have children at some point. But we have also heard in the previous years of this Majles about the huge responsibilities that parents have towards their children. The importance of this is told to us in a very simple and beautiful way by a lady called Gabriela Mistral. Mrs. Mistral was one of the most famous poets and diplomats, and the first person from Latin America to win a Nobel Prize in Literature. She said, "Many things can wait. Children cannot. Today their bones are being formed, their blood is being made, and their senses are being developed. To them we cannot say tomorrow. Their name is today." There is an overwhelming amount of evidence which shows that parents are not prepared for having children, let alone bringing them up. Parents nervously joke about always being one step behind their children. But the reality is, most parents are miles behind their children. And even worse than that, some parents aren't even trying to catch up. When someone is not prepared for marriage, how can they be prepared for being a parent? There are also other factors that we need to consider when preparing for life. But let's first take a minute to talk about turtles. We all know that turtles are cute creatures that move around pretty slowly, and that they live inside their shells. And if they sense danger, then they quickly go and hide inside their shells. Some of them live in the sea, and some of them live on the land. Now, have you ever considered what would happen if you took a sea turtle out of the water and put it in the land? It can pull itself along the ground with difficulty, and it might find something to eat, but it'll have a very stressful time and might not even be able to survive. Similarly, if you take a sea turtle, a land turtle, and drop it in the water, it won't be able to breathe or swim. It will be very stressed and eventually even drown. Why is this the case? Don't they both have shells that they can hide in? Don't they both look similar to each other? Yes, they might have some similarities, but there are many biological differences between them, which enables one to live happily in the sea and the other to live happily on land. Neither of them is superior to the other, rather they are just designed for different environments. And similarly, when we look at men and women, we say that they are both humans. But every single one of us knows that there are very obvious physical differences between us. And of course, we wear clothes to hide most of those differences. You may say that these are just superficial differences. Well, I could sit here and list all the internal differences between men and women. For example, differences between organs and hormones. But that wouldn't be a good idea because we'd be here all day. Also, new differences are constantly being discovered by scientists. So, it's very clear that our bodies are different. But what about how we think? For years, scientists have published study after study showing that even the brain and psychology of men and women are different. Of course, feminists, activists, and even newspapers have fought back, claiming that the research is biased due to the scientists' own beliefs or assumptions, labeling the scientist as someone who's old-fashioned, and insisting that any differences can be explained by the way the child has been brought up, and that there is no inherent difference between a man and a woman. For example, in one study, scientists would conduct experiments on infant boys and girls from the age of 9 months to 17 months old. This is an age where children show very few signs, if any, of understanding their own gender or another child's gender. These scientists put toys in front of these babies, and they saw that the boys strongly preferred the kind of toys that boys would often play with, like cars and trucks, and that girls strongly preferred the kind of toys that girls would often play with, like cuddly toys and dolls. As expected, feminists turned around and said that this is because of the way parents had brought their babies up and the babies being used to these kind of toys. So, the scientists took a group of baby monkeys and did the same experiment on them. Again, the male monkeys preferred the toys with wheels, and the female monkeys preferred the soft plush toys. Do monkeys normally play with toys for them to have any sort of toy preference based on what they normally play with? Of course not. Scientists have known for a very long time that there are differences between the brain of a man and the brain of a woman. However, they always thought that these differences were minor. They thought that the brain of a very masculine man might work one way, the brain of a very feminine woman might work another way, and that you would find all sorts of people in the middle of that range. Something which they refer to as a continuum or an overlap in the way the brains of a man and a woman work. However, in February this year, less than 5 months ago, Stanford Medicine published a study that changed everything we know about this topic. The scientists said, look, the brain is incredibly complex. There are so many things to look out for. It's actually a very complex organ and very difficult for us humans to analyze. And even when we do find differences, we're always labeled as being biased or old-fashioned. So, let's just load the brain scans of 1,500 men and women into a computer. Let the computer analyze them, and we'll see what the computer says. And so, that's what they did. And the findings were shocking. First, they found that whenever they loaded a new brain scan into the computer could tell if it was from a man or a lady. Remember, I said that scientists thought there would be a significant continuum or overlap in the way men and women's brain work? Well, the computer determined that there was absolutely no continuum, no overlap between the brains of men and women whatsoever. In fact, they were incredibly far apart. So you couldn't say, oh, the lady was brought up as a lady. If she was brought up the same way as a man, then things would be different. Our brains are made up of lots of different areas which are responsible for different tasks. Scientists can tell which parts of the brain are working at any given time by measuring our brain waves. So, these scientists then did further analysis to see what kind of brain waves correspond to performance in different areas of life. For example, one of the things they wanted to know was the brainwaves, what the brainwaves of an intelligent person looks like versus someone who was not as intelligent. As expected, they found that all intelligent men had brainwaves similar to each other. However, when they compared this to women's, they were shocked. They found that the brainwaves that correspond to an intelligent man bears no resemblance to the brainwaves that correspond to an intelligent lady. They saw the same thing with other factors in life, not just intelligence. And so they discovered that the brains of men and women actually function very differently. Now, going back to my topic of us being prepared for life. Is it then fair that society is encouraging men and women to prepare for the same roles and responsibilities in life? Instead of forcing land turtles to prepare to live in the sea, shouldn't we be preparing them to live on the land? I'm sure that many of you have heard how Hazrat Abbas was prepared for his duty towards Imam Hussein. His mother, al-Baneen, took her duty as a mother very seriously, and she would teach him through both her words and her actions that Imam Hussein was his master and that he should be fully obedient to him. She knew very well that Imam Ali would take him out to teach him how to fight, how to ride a horse, and so on. However, one day she heard something that puzzled her. She heard that Imam Ali was teaching Abbas to ride a horse with his hands tied behind his back. And of course, Abbas was an exceptional student and learnt this. But Imam Ali would insist for him to ride as fast as he could with his hands tied behind his backs. This was something al-Baneen did not understand. But of course, she knew that there must have been a reason that Imam Ali was teaching him this. It was only when news reached her about what happened in Karbala that she understood what Imam Ali had been preparing Abbas for his final mission, where he would have no hands to hold on. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيْ مُنْقَلَبٍ يَنْقَلَبُونَ